Hey friends. So last week I talked about Kent Hovind, of all people, and his atrocious pseudoscience. And mainly what I just discussed is how he ignores the accumulated evidence behind the conclusions of science. What he likes to do, the game he likes to play, is to leap ahead to the conclusion, leaving out all the reasons why we think that's true, and then present it as something absurd and ridiculous and nonsensical, so that he can mock it to his little friendly clack of people out there at Dinosaur Adventureland. Um, so, the point I was making was, yeah, that's kind of bad. That a real scientist sits there and talks about the evidence that led to particular conclusions, and even if it's an absurd conclusion, we can at least show how we got to it. And the important thing there too is something I didn't mention, which is that it also demonstrates that scientists are willing to accept peculiar conclusions from an experiment. That that even Kent Hovind's ridiculous idea that there was some anthropomorphic deity that made the entire universe come into existence in an instant, well, 6 days, 6,000 years ago, with a word, we would accept that if there were actually evidence for it. That's more absurd than the idea of the Big Bang, and we're able to accept the Big Bang because we can follow the clues where they lead. Okay, so anyway, that's what I talked about last week. I got some pushback from Kent Hovind's fans. They chose to insist that everything in the Bible was true. And it led to a series of bizarre, bald assertions that. So I got people telling me that, for instance, that the basic principles of hygiene were invented in the Bible. And why? Because homeopathy is in the Bible. This is the kind of non sequitur we're dealing with here. Yeah, homeopathy, that idea that was invented by Samuel Hahnemann in the late 18th century. No, it's not in the Bible. And it's bad science anyway. So telling me that homeopathy was in the Bible as originally written, no, that's not very persuasive. So I also asked them to give me chapter and verse of some known science that would be already written down in that Bible. And that got even weirder. So there was this guy who chimed in and said that Newton's laws are in the Bible. Oh, well, I would like to know where. I would like to see where those are written down. And then what he did is he quoted the book of Job at me, where it said, "By what way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth?" Okay, this is nonsense. Maybe it's nice poetry. Okay, I'll agree. It is nice poetry, but it's not at all equivalent to the mathematics in Newton's laws. It just tells me that this person doesn't have the slightest idea of what's going on in science, has no concept of science at all, or of any of the conclusions of science. To even confuse the two, to even confuse this little scrap of poetry with all of Newton's laws is damning. Okay, so there's a whole lot of this kind of garbage in the thread on Hovind right now, which brings me to my topic today: the pernicious influence of religion on people's understanding of science. Religion doesn't just propose false alternatives to science, but what it does is it actively undermines core principles of science, the necessity of empirical evidence, of investigating, of questioning, of making hypotheses, and accepting when your hypotheses are shot down. So religion kind of scuttles all that. Now, that does not mean, however, that being religious means you can't have a good understanding of the scientific method. Lots of religious people do. So people are able to partition that and recognize, yes, I value the Bible or the Koran or whatever, and also say, but I got to deal with the real world here. I've got to deal with the evidence, and they don't shirk away from that. So those are good approaches to reconciling science and religion. But unfortunately, what happens is the most ignorant people run with the ball. The most ignorant, foolish ideas out there seem to be driven by people who don't recognize the importance of evidence and science, and instead think that just the Bible is adequate to replace them. So, speaking of ignorance, that's a nice segue to our target for today, a fellow named Hans Wormhat.
Hans Wormhat. This is a video on the top 10 fake animals.
That's right. He thinks a lot of animals are fake. In fact, he's full of nonsense. He doesn't believe in space. He thinks the Earth is flat. And this video, though, this one that I've singled out, is mainly arguing that somewhat familiar animals are all CGI or puppets or people in fursuits. And it goes on way, 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 way too long. So I'm going to cut it down a lot, just to give you his names of these different animals, maybe a tiny scrap of his reasoning, and I'll speed it up as well so we can get through it fairly quickly. Yeah, he's not worth spending a half hour on, okay?
Okay, 9. 9 on the list. I chose the shoe bill because this came out of nowhere. It's just a CGI creation. Do you guys remember when the shoe bill first appeared on the scene? People in the comments would say that doesn't look real. It looks like CGI. That doesn't look like a real animal. And I think some of them are puppets. Puppetry is a huge part of this fake animal thing. And so we'll start with 10, the anaconda. Have you guys ever been to the zoo or some other place with reptiles, and they'll have these giant snakes that just sit there and they never move? It's just a fake snake, and so many photos like this exist out there that are just ludicrous, obvious CGI. Number 8, I wanted to give something historical, the dodo bird. This didn't just start happening, these fake animals. They fake everything. They lie about everything.
Now, you're probably thinking, as I was, this has got to be an act. Nobody could be this goofy, right? This is total absurdity. And most of us would give more credit to religious people than thinking that they would accept this line of argumentation. So one of the things I expect to hear from people, I always do, and it's incredibly annoying, people will announce, oh, he's just a Poe. He's just faking it. So those of you who don't know, the term Poe comes from Poe's laws, which I'll read to you here. Without a clear indication of the author's intent, it is difficult or impossible to tell the difference between an expression of sincere extremism and a parody of extremism. So how do you tell the real thing when it's this wacky from a parody? And here's the deal. I don't care. I really don't care. Accusing someone of being a Poe is pointless. So I have a couple reasons for this. One is I detest Poe's law. I think it's a terrible, terrible thing. If someone is so invested in a parody that they've sunk huge amounts of time and effort into creating a satire indistinguishable, completely indistinguishable from the real thing, then they are actively promoting bad ideas. It doesn't matter if they think they're funny. They're still pushing the same garbage just in the name of humor, I guess. It's just not very humorous. The second reason is, in this case, Wormhat has a consistent and substantial amount of effort invested in this project, and it's not for the purposes of promoting the joke. So I looked at Wormhat's channel. It's primarily a religion channel. He puts out almost daily videos that are all about Jesus and the Bible They primarily consist of Bible readings and nattering on and on about Jesus. So when the background is louder than the joke, I think we can safely say that the joke isn't the point. So the third reason is we have to give the man a little credit, okay? He's a functioning human being, and he's capable of putting together the awesome wonder of a YouTube video. All right, that's a low bar to clear. I know, as someone who does it, who's trying to do it every week and sometimes failing. But admittedly, it's still a real technological feat in some ways. So he's not stupid. He's just blinded by an ideological bias. We have to recognize that. If his goal is to spread the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, his embrace of the absurdity of these claims about animals undermines that, and he's got to know it. So I have to read his work as sincere. Totally wrong, but totally sincere. In fact, that's, even if it wasn't, that's the only way to engage with it. All right. So with that said, let's get jaded some more. Let's go look at some more of his claims.
Because to me, it's similar to the outer space stuff, outer space lies. But in that, they're trying to sell you stuff to take you away from God. I'll get to that in the end.
Okay, we still don't know why. We don't know why he's saying these things. But near the end, we're going to get some hints.
So here is number 7. Giant anteaters are definitely a hoax. A winning entry from the Wildlife Photograph of the Year competition has been disqualified after it was discovered the photo was of a stuffed animal. What do you know?
Notice how their experts are the most amazing, super smart. They had 5 experts that could look at this and determine, no, that's too similar to a taxidermy version. What?
Okay, so number 6 on the list. Do you see where this is going? Rope climbing robots. Sloths are not real animals. They're animatronics. Bringing us to number 5 on the list, koalas. This was a big, viral, pushed video on YouTube, and you can clearly see it's CGI. That's not a real animal. I think are we already on number 4? Penguins. The emperor penguins, the orange emperor penguins, the ones that they make movies about. The South Pole it's not icy Antarctica. There's a lot of hoaxery when it comes to Antarctica. And emperor penguins. Emperor is 33, and they're animatronics. Okay. Number 2. Is this really number 2? Maybe I lost track. 3. Great white sharks are a hoax. That's why they have to do Shark Week. Okay, 2. Now I'm back on the numbering, I think. Number 2, fake animal pandas. It's the poster child of the WWF. WWF, it's fake, just like the World Wrestling Federation.
But they're clearly gatekeeping it because there's people out there that they talk about all sorts of deception. They can talk about how outer space is clearly fake. They can talk about how NASA is clearly CGI. But then you bring up this animal thing. Oh, no, you're crazy. You're crazy.
So there is a mysterious they, that is faking animals and talking about space. And he's resisting the peer pressure against speaking out against it. What we've got here is a conspiracy theorist who regards himself as the brave loner. He's going up against them, and he's also even going up against his fellow conspiracy theorists. So we're supposed to be impressed because he's even crazier than the crazy flat earthers. Okay? So that's part of his motivation is you can tell some of it's got to be ego that he's serving here.
It's just somebody laying in a suit. It's just a good looking mascot. They probably recruit these people from big time Illuminati high schools. People who are mascots probably get recruited to be these giant pandas.
He lives in this strange world where there are Illuminati high schools that have imaginary animals as their mascots. Maybe they play Quidditch there too. I don't know. But this is a fairly elaborate fantasy. Where are these Illuminati high schools? Do they have Illuminati teachers, Illuminati students, Illuminati custodians? Okay, you get the idea. This is getting pretty far afield. And we haven't yet reached his number one fake animal, though. So let's get that over with.
And lastly, okay, top number one fake animal. It's kind of cheating because it's many, many animals. The great apes are all a hoax. They are humans in fursuits, and it's clearly satanic deception to make people believe in evolution and to think that they're a monkey. I liken this to NASA Outer Space Land. If you have the discernment to be able to tell that NASA's BS, you absolutely should have the discernment to be able to tell that gorillas are people in suits and that all of these great apes are, just like NASA's there to sell you the outer space fantasy, great apes are here to sell you the evolution fantasy, to make people believe that they are monkeys. People believe it. People really believe that, and the reason that they believe that is this great ape hoax. They're fursuits.
So now we can start speculating about his motivations. So he's built up this whole absurd edifice of an anti-God conspiracy as a satanic deception to make people believe in evolution. And his beliefs are tied to this dogmatic insistence on the literal truth of a very narrow interpretation of the Bible. Somehow, the reality of life on earth is a lie to lead people away from his version of the Bible. Never mind that millions of people simultaneously believe in both gods and orangutans without any feeling of contradiction, nor should they feel any contradiction in that. There's plenty of room in Bible belief to believe in penguins and orangutans and apes and all these other things. So evolution and space science and these things like this make him uncomfortable. So they highlight the flaws in his own perspectives on the Bible. So they must be wrong, right? Can't possibly be that his interpretation is wrong. And why does that make him uncomfortable? Because there are too many species, he says.
Anyways, I think I've said enough. The reason that they make these lies is to mock Noah's Ark. How could Noah possibly fit these millions and millions and millions of species? Well, it turns out millions and millions and millions of species is a BS lie that BBC and PBS told you, and Nat Geo or whatever. There aren't millions and millions and millions of species. There's not that many species, and there's enough to fit on the Ark. Evolution is fake. You didn't come from a monkey. Great apes are actors in fursuits. This is the reason, which to me, it's as obvious as the outer space lie. They make the outer space lie to make you believe in a fantasy where God isn't real. That's what they want you to believe. In a fantasy where you don't need God. And that's the same thing with the monkey. They're selling you a fake creation story. And if you can see the deception of the fursuits, you see it. See it for what it is. Praise God. God created all the animals, and God made man in his image. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness.
There's so many species, they couldn't possibly fit on Noah's Ark. Most of us would then say, well, then clearly Noah's Ark didn't exist, or didn't carry all the species, or there was no global flood. But no, that's not, there's no room for that in his worldview. So, no, either biology has to break or his narrow religious beliefs have to break. And this is a clear case of someone who has chosen to pretend that biology is broken. Again, I want to emphasize most religious people don't take this tack. They would see this problem and they would say, well, clearly there's something wrong in my understanding of the book of Genesis. And there has to be something more to it than what I'm reading in this short couple of pages, and would accept the other evidence that's out there. You know, the evidence of the entire rest of the world is against him. So here's the problem. All you have to do to refute his claims is, for instance, visit a zoo. It's not that hard. You can visit a zoo and you can discover that the animals he's talking about aren't fake. They're real animals. There's not people in fursuits. They're not robots. They're not puppets. So, that's trivial to do. And the shocking thing is that he doesn't. And I suspect that the reason he doesn't inquire deeply into his claims is that having them refuted would hurt his views of religion. And those are the number one things he's trying to protect right now. To Mr. Wormhat, religion must have all the answers. His Christian faith must be complete and infallible. And so he chooses to discard all of these central beliefs of a person who lives in the world and interacts with it. Okay, that's my main concern, is that there are religious believers who go so far in this direction, and Mr. Wormhat is an example of that, that they have abandoned all pretense of paying attention to the evidence of their eyes. And that's tragic. Like I said earlier, I don't think Wormhat is stupid. He's incredibly ignorant, and most importantly, he's got a prior belief that he is not going to shake. And I don't know if I'd want to try and break him of those beliefs because he's holding on to them so tightly. Any break is going to be painful, traumatic, possibly psychologically damaging to him. So don't go over to Wormhat's channel and chew him out. I'm planning to just ignore him from now on. You should too. But just recognize that there are people like this in the world. And they are what's making the world worse right now. Okay. Think that's enough? I think that's enough. I've dug deeply enough into this guy's channel. It's very strange. Okay, I'll let it go there. I've had an exhausting weekend. Do you know that we've been doing this fundraiser for Freethought Blogs all weekend long? I will include a link down below. You should go take a look at it. We're done now, but we're still taking money. We'll always take money. So if you feel like donating, go ahead and do that. And speaking of taking money, oh, look at these people. These are my patrons from my Patreon channel. And they are wonderful people who are making regular small donations. And that's kind of important to us right now. We've got monthly payments we have to make. So I'm glad to see them helping out. Also, I am playing for you a little video I made yesterday in the background. It's fall here. Look at there. The trees are changing color. So I shot my drone up in my front yard. I didn't go anywhere. I just went to my front yard, went straight up, scanned around, came straight back down. And you can see all the gold and red and orange trees are out there now, and it's going to get more extreme. The weather is changing fast. Get ready. Soon it'll be Halloween. Not that we're going to celebrate it, but okay. So I'll let you go there. Thanks a lot for listening, and we will talk to you some other time.